Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I have some practical tips for you on ways to fill your monthly spreads. 31 different things you can do to fill these squares. This can be with a Hobonichi Techo cousin. It could be with something like a traveler's notebook with a Midori monthly insert. It could be a good old-fashioned plain wall calendar. Or it could be a bullet journal situation where you are drawing the squares yourself. In any case, here are several things that I like to use to fill my monthly pages. I will, as per usual, put links in the description to everything I talk about today in case you'd like to grab something for yourself or a gift for someone else. All right, I'm gonna go through these just 1 through 31 like this, and I'm going to grab a pen to use for my little pointer here. And we're gonna start off with the first here, and I have the word love. What if you made every day of the month a different positive word? And when you get up and you're doing your weekly planning and you're in the nuts and bolts of your daily journaling and that kind of thing, each day you look at that word and you say, today I am going to focus on love. Maybe tomorrow your word is hope. Maybe your word for Thursday is forgiveness. Maybe your word for Friday is kindness. 31 positive words. And if you do it with a colorful brush pen, you can just have a splash of color across your spread. So number 1 is thoughtful words to use kind of as a mantra each day. The second way that you can use your monthly is to track birthdays and anniversaries. And I think this is a very popular one that we have almost always included in our planners and our organizers. So in this case, for example, we have Wednesday, December 2nd. Seth Smith, he turns 19. So I put the age out to the side, and then maybe for an anniversary, Sam and Diane turned 20. Third way you can use this is as a planner. Maybe you want to use your weekly section for something else. Maybe the weekly becomes an area to do some bullet journaling or some like micro journaling where you fill this spot for the weekly for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, jot down what you did, what you felt about it, little journaling. In that case, maybe you want to use the monthly to put your appointments. So December 3rd here, we have dentist at 9 a.m., kickboxing at 6 p.m. Fourth thing you could do, make a cleaning task list. So all throughout the month, you divide up your tasks, decide what you want to do on each day, and give yourself assignments with little check boxes. And that way you can have the excitement and pride of checking off that you did it. So Friday the 4th, I aim to do laundry, clean the shower, and shake rugs. Fifth idea, and this is full disclosure, what I tend to use my monthlies for almost all the time, is a health tracker. I track the hours of sleep. So I put up here in the left-hand corner how many hours of sleep I got the night before. I put anything that I'm taking, any medication that I took that day that's, in this case I wrote down vitamins because I don't take them every day. I kind of stagger. So I wrote vitamins. I had a migraine. And then I jot out to the side whether it was on the right side or the left side. So migraine-R is a migraine on the right side. And then if I felt like I had a fever and I took my temperature, what was that temperature? And I wrote here in the bottom corner, 99.8. So general health for the day is another idea. Keeping with this health kick, what about a meal planner? So here we have up toward the top what I plan to have for breakfast, middle of the day, lunch, evening, dinner. So I have oatmeal for breakfast, tuna melt and apples for lunch, and veggie lasagna for dinner. What about money? So here's December 7th, check boxes again to give myself some pride as I check them off. Rent is due, and I need to pay my MasterCard bill. So you could fill the entire month with just where your bills go. Or you could track spending. So you could mark throughout the month, every day that you send money out, where is it going? Kroger, $32.28, CVS $26.43, and a library fine, oops, of $4.20. That's what I spent on December 8th, and then do the same thing on the 9th and the 10th and the 11th and so on. What about learning? Can we learn new things? So here's December 9th. What about having a word every day in a new language that you're learning? Or a refresher course possibly for a language that you took in high school. So for example, this is French. You could set aside for the whole year or just that month some words that you would like to learn. Pick random words. Pick words that perhaps have to do with that season or that holiday or something that's going on in your life. So the word for December 9th here is snow. So I used one of those Pentel Fude Touch brush pens and wrote neige, N-E-I-G-E. It is a noun. It means snow in French, and you refer to it as la neige. Instead of le neige, you have to do whether it's feminine or masculine. So la neige. Maybe you just want to stick with English and improve your vocabulary. So when I think back to vocabulary tests in high school, I remember that for some reason my brain could never wrap itself around conflagration. I never remember that it means extensive fire. So maybe you make a list of SAT words and learn a new SAT word every day. In this case, I wrote it with a purple colored pen. Maybe you put those words in here, and then each day you get out the dictionary and you look up your assigned word and you write the part of speech and you write its origin and then you write what it means. So conflagration is a noun. It comes from Latin. It means extensive fire, and from Latin it literally means to blaze. So there's my little vocabulary lesson of the day. Next we move on to weather. I typically track the weather in my weekly spreads. I put it up here at the top section in this little blank space. I just make little doodles for the weather. But maybe you want to make that a colorful thing that fills your monthly spreads. So in this case, we've got a partly cloudy day with some clouds and some beautiful sunshine, and the high is 56. Some people write down the highs and the lows. Some people track down the barometric pressure and the wind. Whatever you need to track for the weather, there you go. You can fill a square with it. Now, I have chosen to do this with watercolors. You can certainly use colorful brush pens. You can use colored pencils. Anything you want to color in the weather. All right, what else could we do that's colorful? Oh my goodness, how about wordle? Are you wordling? Are you a wordler? Are these even words? I don't know. All right, so wordle is something that I have gotten into lately. I do not share my results on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. I do it with some family members and we occasionally have bragging rights. But you have enough squares in a Hobonichi's daily kind of square here to do your wordle. So you start on the third block in, and then that way it'll be centered in the middle. And then hopefully you get it within the 6 guesses. And then there's room to put all your squares in the little colors, and then you could put what the word was that day, or you could put what your running percentage of correct answers is, whatever you want. But here's today's wordle. I will not tell you what it was. I will not ruin the surprise for everyone. But that would be kind of a fun thing to add to your monthlies. Then we have more entertainment. How about binge watching TV shows? So you could track a series that you're watching. Maybe you get into a series and you binge the whole thing, and then you move on to another series, and at the end of the year you can see everything that you've watched. Maybe you write out to the side some little notes about what you watched. So this is Grey's Anatomy, and let's say it was one of those nights that I just got really into it, a cold, snowy night, and I watched season 16, episode 4, 5, and 6. More art. What about doing a different flower every day? Or just some kind of illustration. It wouldn't have to be a flower. You could cover the whole thing with flowers, or you could do flowers, and you could do little animals, and you could do whatever doodles you have in mind. This is just a random flower. It's not even called anything. I just sat there doodling while I was waiting for a phone call. Something else you could track would be sports. So maybe you follow a team or a couple teams. You could put their entire schedule in here, and you could write it in such a way that, for example, it says at 7 o'clock, Alabama versus Auburn, and then you leave room to put the final score. So you could track the home team. Or if your kids play sports, you could track their games here. Then we get into Bible journaling and scripture journaling. What about picking a short verse every day? And you could pre-do these at the beginning of the year and fill in all of them. And then each day kind of focus on the one that you have written down for that day. Or you could sit down each day and just aim to find a new piece of scripture that kind of fit what was going on in your life that day. You could maybe think about a sermon that you listened to this week and pull out parts that you liked and put it on the pages. But in this case, it's, for example, 1 Corinthians 16:14, let all that you do be done in love. And there is actually, believe it or not, well, I think there are a couple websites that have lists of very short Bible verses because, you're obviously not going to get something really long in this tiny little square. So maybe go to one of those websites and find all the short Bible verses and write them into your monthly planner. Keeping on the theme of Bible journaling, what if your goal is to read the Bible to cover in the course of a year, which is what I'm doing? In that case, you can find some kind of goal planning trackers to follow, which will tell you what you need to read each day in order to accomplish that. So, for instance, let's say it asks you to read Genesis books 8 through 11 that day. So you could pre-plan those for the whole year, and then you'd have your assignments ready. What about looking for purpose and goals in your life bucket lists? Maybe you could dedicate a whole month to your bucket list. So each day you would just take a moment to think of something that you would like to accomplish and jot that in here. In this case, I wrote walk on a glacier in New Zealand. Getting back to art, and I didn't put these all together because I didn't want them squished in one spot. I kind of peppered them throughout my list of 31 here. But being artful again, I have some illuminated letters. You could, because there are 31 or 30 or 28 days in any month, you can get a whole alphabet. So you could pre-sketch with something like a Tombow mono drawing pen all the letters of the alphabet. And then each day you could sit down and embellish them and make it as creative as you'd like that day. So this is just, for example, an A, which I turned into a vine by adding leaves. Okay, what about back to exercise? Maybe you could record your exercise as you do it. So for example, on Sunday the 20th, hike 2 miles and yoga. And it could be pre-planning what you plan to do for exercise, or it could be recording what you actually did. This one is something that I made up. I don't know if I've seen it on anyone else's lists in the past, but it came to me today. Why don't you write down for each day of the month a person in your life? And then what you would do is kind of like making a word your mantra for that day or a Bible verse your mantra for that day. Why don't you make that person your mantra for that day? So in this case, Tracy. I'm going to devote some time today to think about this person in my life named Tracy, my friend. And I'm going to think about some of the things that she's going through. I'm going to think of things I'm grateful for about our friendship. I'm going to think some things I could do better. I'm going to pray for her for some things that she's going through. And I could also write her a letter. Maybe this could be to encourage letter writing or encourage texting friends instead of waiting to see their updates on social media. Reach out and call or text or write that person that day. So focusing on an individual person in your life each day of the month. Next, we go back to health. How about tracking blood sugar? I have talked in recent videos about how I don't have diabetes, but I'm also trying to prevent it. So I have been usually once a week checking my blood sugar, but maybe I do that every day. In that case, maybe I write down my fasting blood sugar in the morning and then I check it before dinner or something like that, whatever makes it consistent for you. So you could track something like that. You could do the same thing with something like blood pressure. Then we have this thing in our society called trial subscriptions. And I don't know about you, but I use a lot of them because I kind of jump around with my viewing channels, my entertainment. So I will do a trial of Acorn, and maybe that trial lasts for 7 days. So then I will write on my planner that I need to cancel Acorn, or I will have to pay $5.99 if I decide to keep it. Or let's say I'm going to do Paramount Plus for 3 months because I want to watch 1883. Then in that case, I know what day I need to cancel it so I don't get charged for the 4th month. So maybe you could track your kind of entertainment subscriptions and when they renew and when you need to cancel them. In this case, cancel Spotify. Okay? Next, how about a gratitude journal? Every day, you write down something you're grateful for. In this case, I put a neighbor's garden that I pass each day on my walk. She is doing such a service to the community because her garden is kind of out at the corner and everyone gets to enjoy it as they pass it, and we all get to see the changes in the seasons in her garden. And I'm just so grateful that even though she probably has some tucked away in her backyard as well, she put some out front for the rest of us to enjoy. Another thing you could do is really be artful here, and this would be to do a separate little landscape square every day. So challenge yourself to just do like a little 5 or 10 minute landscape. And in this case, I found a Bob Ross instructional. It was actually a video, and I just looked at the final picture of it, sketched it out really quickly, and then painted it. So I have seen these done where every square is a landscape, and they're gorgeous. If you find that that is a little bit too busy for you, maybe you could mix this up a little bit. Like I said earlier, maybe you could mix a couple of people to focus on with a couple of squares that you're going to use for landscape paintings, and then a couple of squares that you're going to use for Bible passages, for example. You can, like I said at the beginning of the video, you can mix this up so that it's not totally monotonous. Next thing you could do would be micro journaling. And this is where you just write down what you did that day or feelings you had that day in a very tiny little space. If you run a small business or you have some kind of a job in which you have to track your miles, the monthly spread is a great place to do that. For example, let's say that you are a family photographer and you ran to Staples in the morning, you drove 6.8 miles to Staples and 6.8 miles back, and then in the afternoon, you worked with the Jones family and you actually drove to their home to do some family pictures. You drove 12.2 miles there and 12.2 miles back. And then at the end of the month, you can calculate those, put a total down in the corner, and when it's time to do your taxes, it'll be a whole lot easier to figure out your mileage. Something else I've considered doing is things that I am proud of. Every day, sit down before you go to bed at night and think, what am I proud of today? And it might be the tiniest thing. If you have nothing else to be proud of, maybe you took out the trash, you actually did it on time, you remembered, write it down. Or I tend to track my weight on Mondays. I lost 4 pounds. I am proud. I am going to write that in pretty script lettering and shout from the rooftops that I lost 4 pounds. Maybe you graduated with your master's degree that day. It doesn't matter how big or little it is. You just need to find things to give yourself little pats on the back for. That's a great thing to track. What about being super practical and tracking your kids' chores? On December 29th, let's say just every Tuesday, that's Molly's days to clear the dinner dishes, and it's Max's night to walk the dog. This is back to art again. This is essentially a Zentangle. So what I've done here is taken the Tombow Mono drawing pen. I have just drawn random kind of lines, squiggles, And then I went back with watercolors and limited it to, I think I used 4 colors, and I put them in such a way that I colored where no color touches itself again. So I did a little purple here, and then a pink, and then the teal, and then the aqua, and I just kind of played around with those, and you end up with a whole page of just really beautiful colors in abstract configurations. And it's something simple that you can do while you're waiting on hold on a phone call or something like that. And then finally, just a quote of the day. Maybe you challenge yourself each day to find a little quote. You can use something like Quote Garden or something like Goodreads. Both of those will allow you to put in a subject, and then you can find quotes that fit it. So this is William Shakespeare, love all, trust a few, do wrong to none. Again, just like with the Bible verses, you're going to want to find some that are relatively short to fit in this small space. I hope this has given you some ideas for how to fill these pages. Thank you very much for joining me. I wish you well in the coming year in filling your pages with beautiful things. I think it was William Wordsworth who said, "Fill your paper with the breathings of your heart." And that's what I wish for you this year. Thanks again. Bye-bye.